'Tis I, the Witch of Paint, back from my video making break. Woohoo! Technically speaking, I had a different video planned for today. It involved turning blobs into dragons, but I managed to delete the video files for that before I could export the video, so we have to do something else this week because I was just being very dumb, apparently. Technically, this painting was planned for next Sunday, but oh well, things happen and I'm just gonna have to deal with that. Instead, we are going to be painting sheep today, because it's the season where all of the little baby lambs are being born and are now out on the fields with their mothers as the weather is finally getting warmer-ish, which allows them to be outside. I also decided to paint sheep finally because I actually managed to take some decent pictures of sheep while my sister and I were on a walk around the countryside. It was actually, funnily enough, the only field of sheep that we came across. The others were all either cows or horses. To be fair, there's not a lot of animals out and about yet because it's still a little bit cold for sheep and other animals and livestock to be out and about. So I suppose it makes sense that we didn't find a lot of fields with sheep on them, at least not like close to where we were walking. But that's okay. They were fairly close to us, although they did get spooked after I took like a couple of pictures and then they ran off. But no matter, I no longer have any excuse not to paint sheep. So sheep I shall paint. Although, as you can probably tell, this video isn't as sped up as most of my other videos. That's because this drawing took me a whole 20 minutes to create. I kept it simple and quick since I am just trying to get myself back into painting properly. Regardless of that, the video is still a little bit sped up in order to get my usual 15 minutes of painting time in my videos, so it's not completely real time. For proper real time, you would have to go and watch me in my streams. Those are 100% not sped up at all. I started off my drawing by very loosely sketching the general outlines of the sheep. A circle for the top of the head, to which I attached a slightly rounded off rectangle thing for the snout area. I don't know proper sheep anatomy terms, so bear with me on this one, okay? Then the body of a sheep is like a kind of fluffy box, so like a rectangle again. And I very loosely indicate that with a couple of lines before I start to define the general fluffiness and the shape of the legs of our sheep. The little lamb that is standing next to the big sheep is sketched out in a very similar manner, just smaller. Since we are trying to go for fairly realistic sheep proportions, I do pay some attention to the way that everything is shaped, like for the hind legs. It is very easy to just want to draw straight lines, but that is not how back legs of sheep work. You can see it particularly well on the leg of the lamb, that the leg kind of curves inward and then juts outward in a very pointy angle-ish kind of way, and then it just goes down in a somewhat straight line to the hooves, but also not quite a straight line, but it's a small leg, so a straight line is going to be fine. In this case, the hooves are hidden by grass, which is all fine by me, because that's less detail to worry about. I gotta say though, the way I drew the lamb makes it kind of look like it is just sort of very awkwardly standing there and could fall over at any moment. I suppose, though, that it is simply accurate to the experience of a young lamb that's barely spent a couple of months in existence. As for the sheep's facial features, I simply added a line for the eye for the big sheep. Kind of looks a little bit closed, I suppose. And little pointy oval-shaped thingies for the ears, nose, and a line for the mouth. Same goes for the lamb, but, well, smaller and kind of directed into a different direction. Now, let us move on to the fun part. Erasing the sketch very lightly and then painting the sheep. For this, I wanted to challenge myself a little bit at the very least. So instead of, say, a bright colour palette fit for a painting such as this one, where the sky was almost blue and the grass is very green and the sheep are kind of just very vibrant and stuff, I decided to pick the Derwent Tinted Charcoal Paint Set because I haven't used it all that much yet, and I thought it would be an extra challenge for myself, considering, it's a limited colour palette that is also very muted. And also another extra challenge is that I only use the water brush that comes with the set, because that is 100% out of my comfort zone. I don't use these sort of brushes a lot because I feel like the amount of water on the brush is hard to control sometimes, but I think I used it quite well with this painting, so all is well, Aside from maybe forgetting that I have a mixing area in this palette as well, I just ended up using the paint straight from a paint pan most of the time. Sometimes I did dab it off on the sponge and it ended up being a little bit dirty at the end, but I hardly use the mixing palette in this palette for some reason. I don't know why, but I think it's fine either way, so who knows why I was doing like that. So I decided to start out by painting in the background, which was going to be mostly sky and then that little line of grass at the bottom, I started out with the sky though, using mountain blue because it is the only bright sky-like colour that I have, and it's not even that bright really, it's very muted and it's very dark. But I did just want to see if I can just cover this large area in a colour that suits the sky using the water brush that I have with a water container at the end. So that was just me kind of warming up with a brush a little bit, get to know it a little, And because sky tends to get darker at the top, I decided to add in a little bit of ocean deep at the top too, which is more of a grey colour than a blue colour, and it made everything look less like a nice sunny day and more like a somewhat sunny day with a high chance of rain. In my opinion, that's more like the Irish weather we all know and love, so I am not complaining about the way that this sky is looking. That same ocean deep was then used to establish some shadows, which there weren't a lot of in the shape. I do end up using more different colours later on to just define the overall shapes a little bit more, rather than just trying to negative paint around them to get the shape of a sheep across, all while trying to keep it as realistic as I can, given that, this is a small canvas and I'm using a not so fine brush that's also made of plastic and that I don't really know how to use very well. I'm doing the best I can. Now, because I didn't want these sheep to be almost entirely devoid of colour, I used some burnt earth and I think eventually some of the glowing embers as well, in order to get a little bit of texture into the sheep, make it look a little more fluffy by lightly dotting up the paintbrush around, which makes the whole shadow a little bit more uneven and makes it look like, it's not just a flat sheep with flat shadows, it's got some fluff in it, I'm not sure if that description made any sense whatsoever, but that's the best you're going to get. Ew. Technically speaking, the sheep have a lot of yellow hues in their wool because, newsflash, sheep are usually not keeping their wool so completely clean and white. There's, dirt in there, and probably some other stuff too, but let's not talk about that. What I'm trying to get at is this. My palette doesn't have yellow, so my painting of a sheep will be almost 100% whiter than the actual sheep were, except for the shadow areas, which are going to be dark, obviously. As a sort of fix to this problem, I do take the colour that gets closest to yellow in this palette, and I just used that instead, which was dark moss. Although for the grass I also used some forest pine to get some texture into the grass, which is technically a little bit too thick, but then again, the brush is not very fine and it doesn't really have a proper tip because it's a plastic hairbrush, so just gonna have to work with it somehow. I gotta say though, despite my best efforts, the sheep are still incredibly white. Should have considered to use a yellow ochre from a different palette, but I just did feel like taking out a second palette just so I can have yellow sheep. Well, yellow-brown sheep. You know what? doesn't matter. Nobody's going to see the reference really anyway when they're looking through the sketchbook. I might, if I remember, show the reference in this video, probably at the start or something, but other than that, people are going to be looking through this sketchbook and say that the sheep are cute, and other people won't be seeing the reference pictures. So technically speaking, I shouldn't worry about it all that much, but I'm still worrying about it for some reason. I don't know. Being an artist is just weird that way. I mean, I specifically picked out a palette that didn't have quite the colours that I would need to get an accurate depiction of a sheep, and yet I'm still here thinking about why didn't I try to get myself some yellow in there? But oh well, it's okay, the sheep look fine, they're cute. And my brain needs to be a little bit more polite to me. Because really, the only one going the sheep are too wide is me, and nobody else, so just gotta get myself together a little bit, you know? Regardless of all that, I do like the kind of muted, earthy tones that this painting has. I'm kind of glad that I decided to go for the muted palette rather than, you know, taking one of my bright colour palettes, like one for landscaping or something like that, you know. I like the earthy tones. The Derwent palette, I mean, the colours do look a little bit chalky, but that's okay because I wasn't, you know, trying to layer them too much, and I did make the mistake of not putting them down on my mixing palette and adding water to them and stuff, and rather just taking the colours straight from the palette, which is technically a no-go, but it worked out just fine anyway. It's just a sketch after all, so. Now, while I finish off this painting, let me make a quick little announcement of sorts. My birthday happens to be falling on one of my days where I will be streaming on Twitch. If it wasn't falling on one of those days, I wouldn't be streaming, but it falls on a streaming day, which is Wednesday, the 13th of March. So, if you know, have any suggestions for what you would like me to paint that day, even though technically I am the birthday child and should technically be picking it myself, but if you have any kind of like things you'd like to see me paint, you can put them down in the comments or just hop in on my stream on Wednesdays and Thursdays, well, sometimes Fridays. It depends whether or not I have something to do on Fridays, whether or not I'll be streaming on Thursday or Friday, but Wednesdays I am definitely streaming. And if you want to, like, pop in, you know, the link is down below in the description for Twitch. And as I've said, you know, you can leave suggestions down in the comments below. And maybe, I don't know, subscribe if you haven't already. Other than that, well, there's not really much of an announcement to make. I just wanted to mention the birthday stream that's going on 13th of March. That I haven't really planned anything for yet, because, I don't know, most of the time I go with stuff in the moment, you know. That's usually how I do things. But I am taking suggestions, so feel free to hop on down there. Now, back to the painting. The one thing I didn't do with this one was tape off the edges, which I did do with the first two paintings that I put into the sketchbook. I just didn't feel like taping it down today, and I'm not sure if I like it more or not. The fact that it's almost filling the entire page, but there's like a little bit of a messy edge to it as well. I don't know. I'm not sure if I want to do this whole not taping off the edges in this sketchbook, considering that the paper is very special as well, because it's 100% cotton. But then shouldn't I use every inch that I can? I don't know. I mean, I also avoided painting anywhere near the ring-bound area, so I mean, that edge does look the messiest, I think. The bottom isn't quite as bad, but like the top of the painting is just, I mean, it's difficult to explain what my feelings about this are. Like, you can definitely tell that I was trying not to get to the top of the painting area that I have available, because it can always go, you know, underneath the paper by accident or something. And then I'll have even more of a mess for the next page, and I don't really want that, so maybe I will get back to taping, because it also looks a little bit neater, but then again it's a sketchbook, so it doesn't really matter, I guess, maybe? I don't know. The sketchbook confuses me a little bit too, because it's ring-bound and not, you know, bound with threads or something. I guess I'm just a bit nervous. Anyway, how about we go on and look at the final result of this painting together, and then we can make up our mind about whether or not we like having taped edges more or not. Overall, I do like this painting, obviously, because it's just cute, it's adorable, it's cute, and I love it, and there's nothing that's going to change my mind on that, really. I mean, it's a quick sketch, it was a quick sketch, it was never meant to be more than a quick sketch, obviously, as I've said, but it's very cute nonetheless. It's simple, easy, quick, and some sheep. Sheep! Who doesn't like sheep? Now, as we have reached the end of the video, let me remind you one more time to subscribe and perhaps check out my social media down below, as well as I've said, my Twitch account down below. 13th of March, birthday stream, yeah! Comment something fun if you'd feel like that, and for the time being, I am the Witch of Paint, and I shall see you all next Sunday. Bye! Well, look what little sheep has made it to the end of the video. Well done. As per usual, here are some outtakes as a reward for making it this far. Have fun. So painting sheep I shall. That was grammatically incorrect. So sheep as a... No, that's not working out, is it? Since my mountain blue is about the brightest colour I have in my palette, and also the only van and you can always leave suggestions.